Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to the second shir in the Maamar Vehaya Bayom Hahu, Tavshin Chavches, the first Maamar of Sefer Maamar Melukat Vav, in this special project, which is Le'ili Nishmas Rosh Hashiva, Rav Michal Akiva Gershon, ben r'rfael Mנחem נחum. In our previous shir, we finished the Ois Dalid, and we were left with two big questions. Question number one is seemingly everything is better with avoida when it comes to avoida b'koyach atzmoi. And yet it says that when Mashiach comes, Vehaya Bayom Hahu yitaka b'shofar gadol, that the shofar gadol is going to blow on its own, seemingly lacking the tremendous maila of avoida sa'adam. And secondly, everything has to be hayira and avoida Hashem. What is the hayira Vehaya Bayom Hahu yitaka b'shofar gadol in our avoida now, bisman hazeh, in the last moments of Golos, right before the Geula? So in today's shir, we're going to be learning from Ois Hey until the end of the Maamar, Ois Tes, some very, very geshmak in yonim, and we'll clarify these two above mentioned questions. And the aside of the answer is by understanding a concept called Mina Meitzar Karosaya Anani Bamerchavyo, which means that we ask the Eibishter from the Meitzar, which is the part, the time which is constrained and limited, and we ask that Hashem should answer us by Merchav. And Chassidus explains that it's not just that because we are b'meitzar, we want to reach the Merchav, rather that the Meitzar itself enables us to get the Merchav. Like Chazal say on regarding Rosh Hashanah, that Kol Shana Sherosha Mitchilosa, any year that starts off Ein, Misasheres B'soifa, gets rich, gets good at the end. The idea is that there's a certain maila that the Eibishter values and appreciates, a certain tmimuskad, a certain bittul, a certain inyan that comes from the Meitzar, which we find by the concept of the difference between a tefillah la'ani and a tefillah la'oshir. There's a difference when the ani davens and when the oshir davens. And the difference is in two main nekudos. The ani, first of all, doesn't get distracted by the giluyim of the melech. For example, someone that has a taste in wine, a taste in food, a taste in culture and art, when he comes to the king's palace, so he can appreciate the paintings and the cuisine and everything else that's going on in the palace, so he can get distracted and not actually reach the melech because he's enjoying so much of the arum of the melech. However, an ani doesn't know about these things. And that's why it says Tefillah la'ani kiyatev ki l'fnei Hashem yishbach sichai, that the ani only wants to go to the Eibishter. He doesn't get distracted by the external parts. And obviously such a tefillah is accepted more. And more than that, the tainug that is received by the ani is more than the tainug that is received by the usher. Even if the melech grants the usher's request, he's already used to a certain lifestyle of erchava. And to him, tainug tmidi ein tainug, because he already has it and he knows it and he feels it, so he doesn't have that same gishmak in what the melech is giving him. The ani has nothing. And the ani is coming to the king and getting answered by merchav, is getting answered in a gavaldik way. Because he's not used to anything, so when the treasures and pleasures that the king gives him is niskabel b'tainug yoiser, it actually reaches deeper and he has a deeper pleasure than even the usher. Now we can understand what does it mean, why when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a shofar gadol. What's going to cause the shofar gadol? Well, based on what we said, that the Meitzar actually brings the merchab, which means that the more constrained, so to speak, that actually brings the merchab. Being that that's the case, so we've reached a point in Golos that we have true Meitzar. We have real Oivdim, we have real Nidochim, they're Beretz Ashur, and Eretz Mitzrayim, Mamish, Verschloppen, in their Taivis. And these are real Meitzar. These are real issues for Yiddishkeit. These are people which are seemingly very far away. So not only do we need a Shofar Gadol in order to reach these people, but Adarabah, and more than that, the fact that they are so Oivdim and Idochim, the Meitzar itself brings the Merchav. That itself elicits from the Eibishter the Shofar Gadol, which is like we said regarding Rosh Hashanah, that Mina Meitzar reaches the Merchav. Now, someone might ask, so okay, if so, what can I do if I am from? In other words, my avoida can't reach the Shofar Gadol. You have to be someone that's Oivdim and Idochim in order to be Zoichet, to be Mamshech the Shofar Gadol. And the Rebbe is going to be addressing that Mir Hashem in a further ois. Just hold that thought. Don't think that it's not for each and every one of us. So this was the summary of ois Hey. Now in ois Vav, the Rebbe continues that as opposed to what regular rational thought will tell you, that when the Shofar Gadol sounds, the Yidden which are in Ashur and Mitzrayim, means people which are far away, deep in Olam Hazeh, they are going to leave there and come to Eretz Yisrael, which would mean that Mitzrayim and Ashur remain Farshlofen, but we're going to take the Yidden, we're going to be Ma'oder the good and take that out. Says the Rebbe more than that Ashur and Mitzrayim itself are going to get elevated. Why? Because if you think about it, they were part of the process of bringing about the Shofar Gadol. If you think about that, in order to get the Shofar Gadol, you had to have a matziv of Meitzar, of those which are Oivdim and Idochim, and for that you needed to have Mitzrayim and Ashur, that those Oivdim and Idochim should be there. So because it was such a Golos, because it was such a Olam Hazeh, it created that Meitzar. So the Golos is a Shutif in the Merchav. The Meitzar is a partner in the Merchav. And therefore, when the Merchav comes, when the Shofar Gadol is Nizgala, not only will the Yidden leave Ashur and Mitzrayim, but Ashur and Mitzrayim are going to be elevated as well. And we find this very inyan on Rosh Hashanah itself. And we find this very inyan in regards to Brias HaOlam itself, that the Eibishter, when he created the world, it was started on Chafei Elul, and Brias HaAdam was on Rosh Hashanah. Yom Vav L'Maaseh Bereishis. Zeh Yom Tchilas Maasecha. On Rosh Hashanah, that's the day that man was created. Zikaron L'Yom Rishon, but it started on Chafei Elul. Now, when I was in Toronto, I remember in the Mashpia, we learned that Anat Shir Aleph was Rabbi Hershel Rabisky, so long as it. So he would always, in his concise way, be able to summarize a Hasidic concept in Pashut 2 words. And I asked him once, what's the definition in the shortest way for Chitzonius and Pnimius? And he said like this: Chitzonius is Sulim, meaning anything that's done for something else, that's already a Chitzonius. So when the Eibishter created the world, there was Chitzonius Haratzon and Pnimius Haratzon. Hashem wanted Yidden to do Avodah. That's the Pnimius Haratzon. For that to happen, you have to have a Velt. So the Brias HaOlam, the Ratzon for Brias HaOlam, is Chitzonius Haratzon. For example, someone that goes to work, most times it's not the Ratzon to work, it's a Ratzon to have money, which that itself is a Ratzon for something else. But the idea is that the work is Sulib in order for something else. That's Chitzonius. But when the Eibishter created man, created Adam, and we do our avodah, which we, the Pnimius Haratzon, the Tchilas Masecha, we do our avodah. So that actually makes an elevation that is mechazek and maila not only us and the Ratzin for Yidin, but it actually elevates also the Ratzin for Brias HaOlam, because they Nizgala that they are a shutuf in the Dira B'Tachtoinim, because they are part of the process of creating the world. In order for us to do mitzvahs, in order to make the Dira B'Tachtoinim, so when that happens, not only does the person that made the Dira get elevated, but the entire Brias HaOlam, the whole world, and the Ratzin to create the world gets elevated in the process. Al derech we find the neshama and the guf. When Mashiach comes, we're going to see the mile of the guf, the mile of tachtoinim. So why is there going to be neshamas begufim? What do we need the neshama for? The guf is going to have its own life source, so to speak, because the neshama was a shutah in the bria. That's not discussed in this Maamar. It's a concept from other Maamarim as well. Now we are going to be addressing the question that we left hanging after ois hey, and that is, if it's true that in order to get the shofar gadol, you have to be oivdim and idochim, because that's the more meitzar creates the more merchav. So then what do you do if you are Baruch Hashem from and you're not so oivid and nidach, and you're trying to serve the Eibishter, you're trying to get higher, you're trying to connect? So can we not be part of bringing the shofar gadol? Is there something that we can take from this Maamar besides just saying, oh, so we're out of the process of the great shofar of Mashiach? Says the Rebbe, no. A person can be shomer Torah mitzvahs and yet have such bittul to Hashem that he feels like he is in a meitzar. In other words, it doesn't have to be physically that we are distant, physically that we are far away, physically, spiritually that we are not connected. We can do Torah mitzvahs, and we can be working on our avodas Hashem, avodas Tefillah, niskashus, everything. But if we remove our mitzias, our tainug, and we focus on our bittul to the Eibishter, that bittul is what makes us, so to speak, b'meitzah. And that allows us to be part of the process of reaching the shofar gadol, the mercha. Now, someone's going to say, how can I do that? How? I know I'm serving the Eibishter. So how can I feel that I'm serving the Eibishter and at the same time I am b'meitzar, that I'm, like, so to speak, totally lost? How do I have these two opposite things? I am serving Hashem, so I'm not b'meitzar, and yet the bittul is supposed to be felt as if I am b'meitzar. How does that come together? Deb explained that this is very, very important in Oy Zayin, and that is like this: that when someone does his avodah, but he realizes that with all the avodah that I do, Lagabe the Pnimius, Lagabe the Eibishter himself, it's mamish, not just claim. It's nish emesdik. It's not it in comparison to the Eibishter himself. He feels like the Rebbe uses the term lacheti choshiv. It's like almost like a sin, because it's so not emesdik. So then, such a person, even though he's serving Hashem, he obviously feels that he is also b'meitzah. This person comes to such a realization that all his avodah, if it's from his own koyach, is nothing. And it's like insignificant in comparison la mitzvah ha'avodah. And that itself could be connected to yitoka b'shofar gadol. We explained that yitoka means that it's blown by itself. Here, seemingly, it's not, because it's coming through the avodah ha'adam. And if it's coming through avodah ha'adam, that is what's being mamshich the tkiya shofar. So says the Rebbe, and this is so yishmak and such the Rebbe's hashkofen, that you can have both miles, which means there could be the mila that it's avodah ha'adam, that it's actually coming through your work, and yet it's, so to speak, yitoka straight from the Eibishter, as if it's without your avodah, coming straight momayla lamata. How so? How can it be together? Because if a person reaches the level of bit, that he realizes that really mitzad his own koyach, his avoida is missing and not b'shleimus and mamish insignificant. And everything that he's getting is because that's what the Eibishter gave him. It's a matanim in Hashemayim. In other words, he doesn't associate his ego with his avoida, and he's ever present the mindset that it's all from Hashem. Such a person, so to speak, his avoida is nothing. It's all the Eibishter. It's all Yitaka. Even the person's avoida he recognizes is directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the end of Oizayin, the Rebbe adds a very fascinating lahoisif, that paragraph. And that is as follows, that the Frierdiker Rebbe explains that everything has, to the end of the day, come from avodas ha'adam, from the avodah of Bnei Yisrael. Let's understand what's going on. When a bacher goes on Miftsoyim, and we ask Yid if he wants to put on tefillin, we're the one asking him. But when he says yes, we believe that it's his yes, it's his neshama that's really saying roitza ani, meaning he has the yes in him the whole time. It's not being forced on the person, it's just revealing the rotzen that he has the whole time. It's his yes, it's not our yes forced on him. And the same is true. It says when the shofar gadol comes, and Yidden are nesoider to come to the Eibishter, it's not like the Eibishter is forcing himself on them. Like that's like Yitzias Mitzrayim, that it was Momaylo Lamata. But after Matan Torah, the main avoida, even for the Oivdim and Idachim, it's going to be theirs. The Shofar Gadol is only going to bring out what they themselves have already. So it comes out, to summarize, that there are two Eifanim in this Vehaya Bayom Hahu you talk about Shofar Gadol. The first Eifan is someone that's truly Oived, and he's a Nidach, and that Meitzar brings and is Mamshich the Shofar Gadol, because Mina Meitzar El Merchav. And once that Shofar Gadol sounds, it's Megala, the true Ratzon of each Yid, to come serve the Eibishter in Yerushalayim. And then there's a second level, like we mentioned, someone that is serving the Eibishter the whole time, but he feels and he realizes that his avoid is all from it on his own. It's insignificant, and the koyach that he has is mumayla. In other words, he's mevatel himself. He doesn't focus on what he's doing. He's focusing on that it's all really the koyches and the matones that are given to him in Hashemayim, and that makes him an oived and a nidach beruchnius, because the bittul, the positive oived, and that brings the shofar gadol. And that again is mechazik his own etzem neshama, the avoida that comes mitzad every single yid, that it comes on his own. And now you can understand the hira and avodas Hashem. We are holding now right before the big shofar gadol. The Rebbe adds in the Maamar, like I mentioned in the previous year, that this was coming behemshich to the 6-day war, which the Eibishter showed tremendous nisim. And it was a tremendous hisoirus of tshuva by Knesset Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. And the Rebbe is saying over here that the focus of our avodah now, because Kol Ma'aseinu, V'Avodeiseinu, all the giluyim of Yemosel Mashiach is dependent on our avodah, and especially this gili of the Shofar Gadol is dependent that we should feel and serve the Eibishter like an oivid and a nidach, meaning that we serve the Eibishter with such bittul that we know that our koiches are given to us mulmayim. And now at the end of this ois, which is unbelievable, Chevra, if you just hear this, that itself is mechazik the entire Maamar, this entire avodas Hashem, because the Rebbe flips a misconception on its head, and that is someone's going to say, yeah, the whole day I'm thinking that it's not my koyach. That's very depressing. That makes me feel shvach. Who am I? I'm a nothing, and therefore I'm going to accomplish less, and I'm going to be depressed. Says the Rebbe on the contrary, completely on the opposite. Somebody that thinks that he's accomplishing, that person also knows his own limitations. Everyone has agbolis. We're all limited. So therefore, he's only going to push himself to a certain level. However, once you deher that it's not your koyach, that it's the Eibishter's koyach, once you're going with Hashem's koyach, you go bli gvul. And I want to share this. I look around at some of my classmates, let's say my Toronto classmates, others, and you look at them, and they were regular nice bachrim. And in their own Kishroines, you would say they were memutza, average, regular, which is very fine. And many of them have become shluchim. And Pashke Kertavel, Binyan Moistus, Luciferes, Chinuch Moistus, budgets, they built empires. And you ask yourself, how were they able to do that? When they were in yeshiva, they could really put something together. And they couldn't, they were regular, average people, which people with their kishroinus in the workforce would remain average their entire life. And here is a Kernavel. Why is that? Because when you reach that bittul, and when you tap in as a shlich, you say, it's not my koyach, it's the Mishaleach's koyach. Once you go with the koyach and Mishaleach, it's bli gvul. All of a sudden, it's not about what you naturally can accomplish. It's about the koyachs from which are bli gvul. So al derech zeh, in what Rebbe is demanding from us in our avodah b'zman hagolos, end of golos, right before these galos, is that we realize, each and every one of us, that our koyachs are given to us from the Eibishter. And mitzat unzer avodah l'chet yichoshen. And that should not make us weak. That should not make us shvach. That should not make us sad. That should not make us depressed. On the contrary, it should be the source of such simcha that we are going with an open checkbook. We're going with bli gvul koyach because we're mamtono mikol aloshin. The Eibishter is uns aufgeheben, and now we have a whole new koyach. And that koyach should bring simcha. That koyach enables us to break out of all hagbolas because we're gainish mit unzer koyches. We're not going with our own koyches. We are going with the koyches mumayla. Now, let's learn together inside. Vihine. It's before by Maamar. It's explained in the Maamar Vehaya Bayom we talk about shofar gadol in the Torah regarding the shofar of Rosh Hashanah. That the ikar hamshach is through the pnimius halev, and that's really what shofar really is about, the inner calling out to the Eibishter. Yet, no one's going to say that that's enough. You actually have to blow a physical shofar, a ram's horn, kipshutay. Why? Because asiyah delayla, the dir b'tachtoinim, is made with ma'isa mitzvahs, not with screaming out from your heart and your emotions and your oimek halev. Also, to bring it down begashmis. Says the Rebbe Mizem Muban, this is understood. The same is regarding to the Kiyah Shofar Gadol of Yemois HaMashiach. That it's not enough, everything we did ad achshav until now. And now the Shofar Gadol has to be Ba'ifin Shal Kol Yisrael. Even the Oivdim and Idachim have to come and bow down to the Eibishter and Har HaKodesh in Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim Kipshuta, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, Shelichenu K'emiyus L'Artzeinu, and it should be Ba'gola Didan or B'korei Mamish.